Okay, welcome back. Here we are in Photoshop. We're going to be learning about taking a image from a background to use it as a piece of clip art to drop into another file with a transparent background, like a PNG file. So first we're going to start by clicking in the Photoshop here. File, open a downloaded file. Here, so I'll go to my downloads. And we're going to take the first one here, and the properties here, we first want to take a look at the image. Okay, so at first glance I can kind of tell that this is going to be a little pixelated, so we're going to image size, and as you can see it's a rather small image, so we're just going to say okay, that's fine, that's what it is, so we're going to be okay. Next thing we're going to do is the quickest way that I have come across of removing an image, especially a single color, from a background, is going to select and color range. Now in color range you're able to pick what color you want to select. So I'm going to select the white, and I'm going to take this fuzziness all the way to maximum. So basically it's picking up every instance of that white that I want to grab. Then once we have that sampled, hit OK, and as you can see here, we'll zoom in, and you can tell it picked up basically a range of white all the way around this image to just select the black areas of this image. At the first glance here, I'm thinking it's not going to be the best selection, so first I'm going to see what I can do. So right now, select the white. What I want to do is remove the lock on the layer and pull that off here and drag that into the trash can. And the first thing I do after that is go ahead and delete. So I'll be deleting the white out of the background here. So now after I've hit the selection, I'll go ahead and delete that, and as you can see here, this is now what I'm left with, just the black selection. Now what I would like to do to make this image a little bit more pure, to make it more solid, is to go ahead and fill this black area in with a solid pure black. So what we're going to do is go to select. As you can see, everything's still selected, so we're going to select, and we're going to inverse that selection. Now we're going to take now what that was, the black area, and now fill that in. So I'm going to go to Edit, and then go to Fill. And then what I want to do is select Color in the menu here, and it's going to bring up my color here. And what I want to do is I want to put in a pure black. So the best way I've been able to do that is put 0 into my RGB, so red, green, and blue at 0, which gives me the web code of 0, which is a pure black. So I'm going to hit OK, and what I want to do is make sure that my mode is normal and the opacity is set to 100%. I don't need to preserve any transparencies here, so I'm going to hit OK. Now that went ahead and filled in that pure black into everything that was selected. Now I'm going to go ahead and deselect this image now and take a look at this. Now, as we understood in the very beginning that this wasn't the best quality image to begin with, so the pixelation does show up as you zoom in. But if this image is only being used at the 3x5 size, the resolution should be fine. So if I put this at 100%, so I'm going down here at the very bottom, putting it to 100. And this is actually more like what the size will be when it's being produced. So that right there is quality from a distance for this type of image. And it's pretty much the same kind of process for any kind of solid image that you need to remove from a background. It is more complex when it does come to removing an image out of a more complex type of image, say an actual photograph, that takes a little bit more time, selection, and a little bit more finesse. So that is the entirety of removing backgrounds from a image. Okay, now that we've created the image, now it's time to go ahead and save it. Let's go ahead and save this out as a PNG. We're gonna keep it in the same canvas size that it came in at. Depending on what you're working with or who you're working with, you always want to keep these things the same unless they're asking specifically for you to change that. So I'm going to leave this as it is. Hit OK. And then I'm going to go ahead and go to File, and I'm going to export, and then I'm going to export as. Okay. Now this is where you get to choose the type of quality of the image that you're producing for whatever purposes it's for. As you can see, my format is already selected at PNG. You do have JPEG, GIF, and SVGs as well. But we're going to go with PNG. We want transparency, so if we click off the transparency, you can see that that background, it just goes to white, which is in effect the opposite of what we're looking for right now. So we want to make sure the transparency is selected. Right here, we're keeping the scale at 100%, not changing any sizes, and no metadata, and basically we're ready to go. So all we're going to do now is hit export, and then we're going to select our destination on the desktop. So we're going to go ahead and call this guitar PNG. Go ahead and hit save. And there we go. Now we want to make sure that the process did work correctly, right? So best thing to do is to go ahead and open up a new file, or if you have a previous file that you've had open, it's always fun to go pull it over something else here. So right here, 20 by 20 inches, this is fine. I'm going to hit create, and then I want to put a contrasting color. So that could be any color opposing, basically opposing the color that you're working with. So I'm going to fill this in with red. So my paint bucket here, click this red, and there we go. Now what we want to do is go ahead and place our PNG file on top of it. I'm going to go to File and Place. I'm going to go ahead and place Embedded, not Linked. And I'm going to be looking for my desktop and my guitar PNG. So there it is. Hit place, and it's going to give me an option to place it wherever I want. So that's the size it was. I'm going to go hit return to place it where it is, and then I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on it. And there's my PNG. Now you notice that there's a black outline bar around that. Now what most likely happened is that there was a black in the file that I just did not see. So that's something that does happen on occasion. So I mean, for the most part, it's a fairly easy fix. So to fix that, and you go back to the original file here, I'm going to go ahead and select the tops here, hold down Shift, side, bottom, and side, and I'm just going to hit delete a couple times just to make sure I got everything out of there, and that should take care of it. Files, so we're going to export this one more time. Export as. Now even though like little things like this do occur, it's not a reason to panic or to think something went wrong. It's just, some things you can catch the first time and sometimes you don't. So here we're just going to replace the previous file, and we're going to see what happens to that file now as we go in here. Now if I would have placed this embedded, which maybe I might have the option to, if I undo this, file place, now I won't be able to see it now, but there's a fun little trick if you do place embedded and you do update graphics, which I will show you. But right now I just want to see how this came through. As you can tell now, there's no border. You just have the PNG file of what you worked with, and now that's what you have. Now let me show you what happens when you update something like this. So we have this as an embedded document now, a linked document I should say. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add something to this file, which you can do whatever you want, but here I'm going to fill this in. Oh, looks like I have to select the layer. That would work. I'll just fill this in with the red, and actually that won't show up on a red background, so let's change that to black. Okay, now we're going to save it. Cancel, sorry. We are going to update that export. My apologies there. So what we're doing here is we're creating the same file once again, but this time with the change exactly the same as before. I'm going to export it. I'm going to save it right over the last one. Hit save, replace, and there we go. Now we've updated it. Now if we go over here, we should now be able to get some information here. So if we go into the Photoshop layer, right click it, and I believe it would be, no, it's in here. Let's go here. Maybe there's like an update. Edit content. Oh, relink to file. Okay, so we are going to relink, and that was our guitar, and we're going to hit place. And as you can see now, it has the updated version here. Sometimes this actual link will update itself. Sometimes you'll actually get like a notification. I don't know exactly how that is enacted in the actions palette, but that's what I was trying to get at, is to show you that even if you do update after the fact, you can still change it if it's linked into a file. If it's just directly embedded into a file or placed without a link, it will just remain the same, and that will never change. So just a little tip for you guys out there, just so you understand a little bit more about the capabilities of Photoshop and see how that all works. Now that you have a working PNG file, you can now go ahead and use it wherever you might need. Okay, so here we're back into Photoshop. We're going to be discussing more about images and how to remove backgrounds from a more complicated or just a little bit more of a difficult approach to removing these elements. That's a lot harder to do than your solid elements. So let's just say we want to keep these two arms here right down the middle, and then we want to remove just about everything else. So my first thing I would do, number one, unlock your image so you have full access to it. And then I would set up some guides where these images, where you need them to go ahead and basically stop. So just outside of that arm there, and then in the opposite side of this arm here, and then we're going to go ahead. We're basically just removing any extra work for ourselves ahead of time, so we can get to a final product a lot sooner. So that's why we're setting these guides up. So once we do that, we can go ahead and you can do this by eyeballing it. Honestly, it doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong if you happen to do this in your own way. This is just my method to my madness. So once everyone removed those elements, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit more, and I'm going to take my polyagonal lasso tool and just do a kind of just an outline version of the area just outside of the arms. That way when we get down to the last few, I call them the points basically to tidy up the image, we're not going to be dealing with a lot of like scraggly information like the wood background or the folders or just about anything else. So whatever details you do want to keep, like maybe the hairs on the arm here, just make sure you keep those outside of your selection area. So we're just going to select around this arm, and as we're coming up here, again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I like to always look at some of the work that I show you guys here as almost a real life scenario where somebody comes up to you and says, hey, can you knock this out real quick? And this is what I need. I need these two arms. I need them removed from this background, and I need it in the next 10 minutes or whatever it might be. So this is kind of one of those situations. Let's just call it that. So now that we have the selection done, we can go ahead and go in and select the inverse of the image. We're going to go ahead and remove all that extra stuff. And then we're going to come in here, and now there's some methods to this. There's one called it's the method where you paint in here, and you use the dodge, I believe. And what you do is you click on the box down here where you edit. Let's see, it's called. Let's get that pulled up here. Quick mask mode, and you're able to take the paintbrush and select the type of brush you want to use for this, which I normally stick with a medium hard brush, nothing too crazy, just enough to get the work done. So we got something with a little bit of a feather, so like one of these guys would be really good. So I'm just going to select this guy, and what we're going to do is we're going to bring it in here, and as you can see, we can start painting what we want. So for the edges, go ahead. I would start with the edges first. Go ahead and make your brush small enough so you can select the areas that you want. And as you can see, it's selecting a little bit past that area because of the type of brush I picked, which is okay. I mean, it's going to add a little bit more detail to my selection, and the more the merrier at this point. We're just trying to get a quick selection. Now there are other methods to this. One is the quick selection tool you can use. That could speed up your process a bit, but with the quick selection you do have the possibility of missing out on sections just because it doesn't pick up the color range correctly sometimes, or if there's a particular item that needs a little bit more, I want to just call it finesse, but it's just a lot of tweaking to get the selection just right. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through the rest of this, and we'll get to the end of my selection process here. And again, all we're doing is just going along the outer edge, because once we have the outer edge, all the other selection on the inside will be a piece of cake. So let's fast forward. so we're still in our quick mask mode, and what I've done now is eliminated the I went over here to my layers and then to channels. If you don't have this, you can go to window, go down to channels, and it'll pull up this. Now you can see where my quick mask is and my selection process there. What I can do here is now select the outside of the selection by just clicking on, I can use my magic wand, clicking on here, we'll select the outer edge here. If I select on the opposite side here, I'll select the outer edge of this mask here. Now I have the RGB channels turned off so nothing else gets in the way of my selection. And then what I'm going to do now is take this selection and go to select, inverse, and then I'm going to go ahead and edit and fill with, actually first, before I do that, I'm sorry, we're going to go to our layers palette one more time. We're going to add a new layer, and then we're going to go ahead and, which actually turned on our channels again. Right here, we can either fill this in as a selection, so we have it for future reference, which I'll show you right now. So we'll just go ahead and fill this in. You can use the paint bucket using your black. Just go ahead and fill that in. And then you can go ahead and save this as a channel. Let's see here. I believe we got our channels here. We'll just keep this saved as our channel selection. And now we have channel. Just make sure you're out of quick mask mode when you do this. Deselect the channel that you had. Select the layer that you're working on and go ahead and delete. And now that's removed pretty much 99% of the stuff we want removed. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and crop this a little bit tighter. So what you can do now is in your selection menu is hit select and go to modify, and we are going to contract, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to see what this looks like. So let's go up to let's call it 4, no, let's just do 3 pixels. Okay. Okay, so that was the opposite direction. So what we need to do is just the opposite of that. So select and modify by expanding. And we're going to go ahead to 3 pixels again. And you can see that got us a lot closer to the edge here. I'm going to do a little bit more just to get that a little bit tighter. So that was to expand. We'll go another 3. And that kind of gets me where I would like to see this. It does kind of clip in a little bit here on these edges. What you can do is you can always go in here with your lasso tool. Holding shift, you can add to it. Let's see, we're working on an inverse selection, so we have to actually subtract it. So if you go through, make sure you hold down your Alt key and get that little minus line around your lasso so you can get those little areas that you want to keep. Just going over to make sure that those fine-tuned selections are taken care of. I know there's going to be areas around this that are going to need that, so what you want to do is just take your time and go through the image and make sure that you have grabbed all the elements that you want to keep and keep the way they are going to look, because these pieces will be deleted out of the image, and normally if those are seen being on top of another image or whatnot, you can tell that there was some Photoshop issues in the process. So you just want to go through and make sure it looks natural as possible, and you should be pretty good to go at this point. So we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We're going to go ahead and delete the outer edge one more time. And there we have it. So now we have our two arms reaching across here. Oops, I gotta move that. Select that off. And we have a completely blank background. What we can do to make this maybe look a little bit less, a little jagged on these edges, is apply a little bit of a blur. Blurs are really good. They do mask a little bit of those um, quality issues that you might be having some trouble with. So we'll go ahead to our blur, under filter, blur, and down to Gaussian. And we just want to put a little bit of a blur on this, not much, just enough to kind of hide those edges. So let's say maximum maybe 2. Let's see what a little bit less looks like. We want to keep the quality of our image, so maybe we'll go to it with like a point. Yeah, so we really want to see what that's going to look like. Let's say right about here. We'll go with 1.9 on the blur. Okay. And there it is. Now we can go ahead and save this out as our arms reaching across, and then save it as a PSD. Photoshop document with layers. Okay. And there you have it. Now we can go ahead and take this image now as a PSD. Actually, we can just copy it right out of this file that we have open. And we're going to go right over to our untitled folder file where we did our guitar. And we are going to hide the guitar. And we're going to paste the arms in here. And there you have it. Clean, crisp, and precise. If you have any other further questions on how to get this done, let me know, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.